In this video, I'm going to be telling you all about the NEBOSH General Certificate, trying to answer as many questions as I can. It's going to include both the national and the international certificates. And I've got some notes on my screen here and just tell you what I'm going to be covering in the video. I'm going to be talking about what the qualification is, what level it is and how hard it is. How you take, whether or not you have to take an exam and a bit about that, talk about how long it takes and the cost implications, whether the course is actually right for you, whether you should go ahead and do it, and if you do decide to do it, how you can take the course. So I'll get into it. By the way, if I miss anything or if you've got any questions that I don't end up covering in the video, just go ahead and ask questions in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. But what is it? The NEBOSH General Certificate is a vocational qualification. What that basically means is that it's a qualification that has been designed specifically to meet the needs of employers. So it's a very employer-led type of qualification. It's very well recognised worldwide because NEBOSH themselves are a very well recognised organisation. NEBOSH, by the way, stands for the National Exam Board for Occupational Safety and Health. And it's worth pointing out that I think the reason that NEBOSH is so well recognised and well respected is the fact that in the UK in 1974, as I know a lot of you watching this will know, the Health and Safety at Work Act came into force, and thereafter there was a need for people to be trained up in health and safety, to be health and safety managers on the back of this new piece of legislation. So NEBOSH answered that call. They kind of were first movers in the market, I believe. When you consider that NEBOSH set up shop in sort of 1979, only 5 years after the Health and Safety at Work Act came into force in the UK, they managed to gain quite a lot of the market share, and they still enjoy quite a prestigious position to this day, really. So what is a little bit more about the qualification itself? It's split, and I'm talking about both qualifications here, both the national one and the international one. They're very, very similar. I mean, they're 95% identical, really. It's split into two units. Unit 1 is about the management of health and safety. Unit 2, I'll get onto that in a second. It's called risk assessment, but it's not really about risk assessment, I don't think. Even though they call it risk assessment, it's more about hazards and controls. It's assessed by you doing a risk assessment, but I'm getting ahead of myself there. Unit 1, let's focus on Unit 1 to start off with. That's about the management of health and safety. It covers quite a lot. It's quite a broad qualification. It's people that study it are surprised at the sheer amount of volume there is in the qualification. There's lots to learn. Unit 1 covers things like legislation. It also covers management systems, health and safety management systems. It covers risk assessment, investigating incidents, how to audit health and safety management systems, that type of thing. I'll put a link in the description that will take you to the syllabus guide where you can go in depth on exactly what is covered. I'm not going to go through everything in huge detail here. Suffice to say that Unit 1 is about the management of health and safety. Unit 2, as I said before, the name of Unit 2 is it's called risk assessment, but actually Unit 2, risk assessment, how to do a risk assessment is covered in Unit 1, and it's not covered again in Unit 2, but what happens in Unit 2 is it goes through all sorts of different hazards that you might find in a typical workplace, and the recommended control measures and precautions that you can put in place to reduce or mitigate those hazards. And again, I won't go through Unit 2 in huge detail, but I will put a link to what's covered in Unit 2 in the description. And I'll talk about how each unit is assessed a little bit later. The next thing I want to talk about is what level is it? How hard is it? Okay, well, in terms of what level is it, in the UK, we've got something called A levels that are taken during secondary education. They're at that level on the current qualifications framework. I don't think that means a hell of a lot, to be honest with you, because a lot of people that do the NEBOSH certificate, their secondary school education is long behind them. Think of it as basic secondary school, or not basic, that's GCSE, but kind of secondary school education type level, which if you're an adult, if you're a full-grown adult and you've been making your way in the world for a few years since your secondary school days, you'll probably handle it. I've got a link to another video that I'll put up on screen right about now, that I did a video that covers exactly how hard the NEBOSH certificate is. So rather than repeat myself in this video and make it too long, I'll just suggest that you go and have a look at that video and try and glean for yourself how hard it is and whether you think you're going to be able to cope with it. If you're an international student and you're going to be taking the qualification in English, NEBOSH recommend a level of 6, and I'm just looking at my screen here. There's something called the International English Language Testing System that is pretty self-explanatory, and in the information that NEBOSH put out, they recommend that people looking to take the NEBOSH certificate are at about level 6, and I'll just explain what that means. And I'm looking here at the International English Language Testing System website. It says a score of 6 or 6.5 shows that a person is competent, meaning they can cope in a classroom situation even though there may be some mistakes or misunderstandings with the language. So if English is not your first language, you don't have to do an English test. This is just some guidance for you to be able to figure out for yourself whether you think that your English is going to be to a high enough standard. So if you make mistakes with your English, that's fine. It's not going to hold you back. But you might want to have a look on the NEBOSH website. I'll put a link to it in the description. They do offer the qualification in different languages. So obviously if they offer the qualification in your first language, I'd obviously recommend doing it in your first language. So that touches on what level is it and how hard it is. Do you have to take an exam? Yes, you do. And I'll cover exams now and assessments now. So for Unit 1, which is the unit to do with the management of health and safety, the way that that's assessed is with an open book exam. Used to be closed book, they switched to open book, in large part I think in response to the coronavirus pandemic, but it's a permanent change. An open book exam is what it sounds like. You do this at home. You have access to your textbooks, internet, all that sort of thing, and you've got 24 hours in which to complete the exam. It's quite difficult. People shouldn't think that just because it's an open book exam that it's an easy exam. Get that out of your head. It is difficult. It's all about really not just knowing the theory, but being able to apply that theory to quite an in-depth scenario that you'll be provided with for your exam, and then answering questions on that scenario. So you've got to link up what you know in terms of theory to the information that's presented in the scenario, which is probably not going to be, the scenario can be based on all sorts of things. It's very unlikely that you'll be lucky enough that the scenario will be based on the type of work that you're used to doing. It'd be a nice coincidence if that happened, but it probably won't go that way. So that's an open book exam for Unit 1. Unit 2 is assessed by you producing a risk assessment. So you're provided with all the forms that you need, and you have to carry out quite an in-depth project, which the bulk of that project involves doing a risk assessment. I should say actually that there are certain elements of Unit 1 that are also included in the risk assessment project that you're required to put together. So we definitely recommend waiting in terms of study Unit 1 and Unit 2 before you put together your risk assessment and submit your risk assessment. So with the exam, there's you've got 24-hour access to your exam for Unit 1. With Unit 2, you've got a few, it's more like days and weeks that you've got available to you to submit your risk assessment project. And again, I'll provide links on the screen now to all sorts of videos that I've put up regarding both the exam and how to cope with that, and also the risk assessment project and how to successfully put that together. Okay, next thing then is how long does it take? Okay, well, let's have a look at the NEBOSH guidance on this one. NG1, that's Unit 1, National General 1, National General 2. Study hours, taught hours, so 29 taught hours in a classroom, 20 hours of private study. NG2, 39 hours in the classroom if you were doing a classroom course, and 20 hours of self-study. So that's basically 1 week, 2 weeks, and then, another week at least. But that's basically what you're looking at, is if you were doing it, and I'll talk about modes of study in a sec, but if you were doing it classroom based, a full week to get through Unit 1 with the tutor, not including your own study time, followed by, or a bit of a break, and then followed by another week where you go through Unit 2 with the tutor. So you're looking at sort of, I'd say, 3 weeks minimum with intense studying, which appeals to some people. Personally, when I did it, I wanted to spread it out a little bit more than that, but people are different in their preferences. So that's what you're looking at. Bear in mind that this is kind of like almost like an A-level qualification crammed into just a few weeks. So depending on how you go about it, you don't have to make it that intense for yourself, but you can if you want to. There are ways where you can make it a little bit less stressful if you're prepared for it to take a little bit longer. What's the cost? Well, this is where it can vary quite dramatically, and one of the key things that you need to think about is the mode of delivery, because that does affect the cost quite markedly. So the cheapest way of doing it is going to be sort of remotely, either distance learning or online learning, or a combination. Usually that's offered with tutor support, so you'll be able to pick up the phone and speak to a tutor. So the price of that varies from training provider to training provider. NEBOSH don't deliver the training. They don't provide the training directly. They work with what they call learning partners, which most people would identify as training providers. So it depends with which training provider you go with. I did a little bit of research in preparation for this video, and we're looking in the region sort of £300 to £500 for the course if you do it sort of online. And that's including the textbook and the exam fees as well. The most expensive option is if you actually attend a classroom course. And again, what I found is I did some research for this video, and quite a wide range of prices. I saw some training providers that were offering the NEBOSH certificate course, classroom based, for £2,500. That, I think, might have been a bit of an outlier. More typically, we're talking around about the £1,500 to £2,000 mark. I don't think many people are going to be prepared to pay £2,500. So I might encourage you to discard that one. There's only one provider I found that was offering the course at that price, which is a bit excessive, I think. So more typically, you're talking, as I say, round about the £1,500 to £2,000 mark. So quite substantially more expensive if you decide to go for the classroom based option. And I just want to touch on that, because speaking to people about this over the years, more than a few times, I've had learners sort of tell me that they feel that they need to do it the classroom mode of delivery, because they don't feel that they've got the discipline, the self-discipline, or the motivation to do it online or distance learning, sort of where they might feel a little bit more sort of on their own and isolated. They need to have the accountability of showing up to a classroom. I've got views on that. This might sound a bit harsh, but if you feel that you don't have the motivation or the self-discipline to get yourself through this course without the crutch of having to attend a classroom course, I'd say forget it. Honestly, you're wasting your money, and it's a lot of money to waste, because as you've seen on the qualification overview that I showed you, let's bring that back up. Even if you do attend a classroom, you're still having, this is what NEBOSH say, you're still having to put in 40 hours, of your own self-study. So even if you go for the classroom-based option, you're still going to have to muster the self-discipline to put in the self-study hours. So it doesn't, I think people falsely believe that all they have to do if they do the classroom course is turn up for the classroom sessions, and that there's going to be nothing else for them to do outside of that, and then they'll be able to pass the exam. In my opinion, there's no way that is a realistic option for somebody just coming in to health and safety. Maybe if someone has been working in health and safety for years and is used to doing exams and likes doing exams, maybe. But for the vast majority of people, I think they believe because it's a classroom course, they're just going to be able to coast along during the classroom sessions, and then they'll get through the qualification quicker and easier that way. So they go for the classroom-based option. But I'll reiterate again, my personal opinion is I don't think you should feel that you need the classroom, the crutch of the classroom to get you through the qualification. If you want to save money, I'd highly recommend the online option or the distance learning option. And again, and what also plays into this as well is the quality of the tutor. You might get a good tutor, but even then, I mean, when I did the certificate, I did that classroom based, And hand on heart, there was nothing wrong with the tutor. The tutor was absolutely fine. But I still think it was a waste of time. Looking back on it now, because I did the diploma, I did that distance learning. So I did the certificate in a classroom, but I came out of that and I thought, well, when I decided to do the diploma, I had the option of doing that in the classroom, but it was expensive. And I thought, you know, what value does the classroom-based option really provide? And I came to the conclusion that it didn't really provide much value, certainly not enough to justify the additional cost. So, but at the end of the day, it's a personal decision. There's lots of other factors that go into it. You know, you'll know what your preferred mode of delivery is, or you'll have an idea about what you think your preferred mode of delivery is, but I would encourage you to think a bit more deeply about it before you part with that much cash. Well, I mean, we're talking thousands of pounds here. This is, you know, serious amount of money. Anyway, moving on. Is the course right for you? Depends. Again, similar to the previous point, there's a lot of factors that go into a decision like this. What I often say to people when it comes to the national or the international general certificate is that if you are looking for a career in health and safety, then it is a good qualification to get, as opposed to something like the NEBOSH Managing Safely course, which is a much easier course, a much shorter course, and therefore a much cheaper course. The NEBOSH Managing Safely course is 3 days in the classroom, or you can do it online. I'm just saying 3 days in the classroom, so you've got a comparison to make against the 2 weeks in the classroom that the NEBOSH General Certificate takes. But the way I put it across to people, rightly or wrongly, this is again my opinion, is I think the NEBOSH Managing Safely course is a good course for people to do if they're working in some sort of managerial position that is not solely focused on health and safety. So they might be an operations manager, you know, or a production manager or whatever. And as part of their wider remit, they do become more responsible for certain health and safety elements. And therefore, doing the NEBOSH Managing Safely course can give them the skills and knowledge to help them do that. But they're never going to be health and safety. They don't want to be health and safety managers. They want to carry on in their current job and go in through career progression in their current job. That yes, it might involve health and safety, but it is not purely focused on health and safety. Whereas if there's somebody that wants to be a health and safety manager or a health and safety consultant or whatever, then I think that's when doing the NEBOSH General Certificate makes a lot of sense. And in fact, what you'll find is that even to this day, many job adverts actually stipulate having the NEBOSH certificate as a basic requirement. And you know, you can test that for yourself if you just go on Google and go health and safety jobs. So there's 100 plus more jobs here. Let's have a look at one, see what the prerequisites are. I'm going past health and safety manager, so looking more along the lines of a kind of an entry level job. So health and safety advisor, Staffordshire County Council. Let's show the full job description. Okay, what have we got here? You will hold a NEBOSH National Diploma in Occupational Health and Safety or equivalent. Will consider candidates with good experience that are working towards the diploma. Well, you can't do the diploma until you've got to the certificate level anyway. You don't actually need the NEBOSH certificate. I think you can get to the diploma with an equivalent to the NEBOSH certificate. And you need to hold IOSH technical membership for that job as well, which oftentimes NEBOSH certificate, NEBOSH certificate certainly does get you to technical membership of IOSH along with appropriate industry experience. So that's the first one we've looked at that mentions IOSH, albeit a diploma rather than the certificate. Here's another one, Health and Safety Advisor. The portfolio group, show the full description, see what the requirements are. Day-to-day responsibilities. Can't see. Do control and find. Can't see NEBOSH listed there. Doesn't come up in a keyword search on that one. Let's have a look at one more. Health and Safety Officer. Show the description here. Does it mention? Yeah, the Health and Safety Officer candidate will have NEBOSH General as a minimum, ideally diploma or working towards. Anyway, I won't go too far down that rabbit hole because you can always do a Google search yourself and have a look at how many of the jobs actually stipulate NEBOSH General. So I think having the qualification puts you on an even playing field to all of the other applicants. Not having it or an equivalent of it can hold you back. You won't even get an interview in all likelihood because there are going to be plenty of people going for that same job who have got the certificate. And the people that will stand out from the crowd are those that have decided to actually go forward from that and work towards the diploma. So if you're looking for a career in health and safety, I think it makes sense. It's an investment. It is a lot of money unless you go down the online route. If you go in classroom, it's a lot of money to put down. But I think you've got to do it to even be on the same level playing field as everybody else. You'll be sort of holding yourself back and minimizing your chances if you don't have the qualification. That's just how I feel about it. But if you're, as I said, if you're working not in health and safety, but health and safety is part of your job, and you are thinking about doing either the NEBOSH certificate or the IOSH Managing Safely, I'd say in that scenario, do the IOSH Managing Safely because it's cheaper, it's easier, and it still gives you what you need to do the health and safety elements of your job. And then you can always think about the NEBOSH certificate after if you still feel that you need that extra level of knowledge. So that's that one. How can you take the course if you've decided to go ahead? Discussed already the different modes of delivery. Think about whether you want to do it in a classroom, whether you want to do it online, or anywhere in between. There's lots of flexibility these days. You can do the course in as flexible a way as you want to suit what you need. The way that NEBOSH provide this qualification is through what they call learning partners. Learning partners, I think I mentioned this earlier, are basically training providers that work in partnership with NEBOSH, but they're separate companies. They're not employed by NEBOSH. They become approved to be able to deliver NEBOSH qualifications, but they're their own company. And what NEBOSH have done is, over the last few years, they've developed a program whereby they grade learning partners according to how well they meet certain criteria. And I'll pull this up so you can have a look. This is the NEBOSH Learning Partner Program. I'll put a link to this in the description, but these are the kind of things, the 6 principles to which all learning partners are held accountable to in terms of delivering their service. So what they do is they grade learning partners in terms of how well they meet those principles. Bronze learning partners, they meet the principles. Silver learning partners, they exceed expectations, and gold learning partners greatly exceed these should be sort of viewed as minimum requirements, really. And again, you can expect, I would imagine, to pay more for the quality that you get with a gold learning partner than going with for example, a bronze learning partner. Training providers that can't even meet the minimum requirements, they just simply don't become learning partners at all. So one thing, what I would suggest is try and find out as much as you can about the learning partner, before you commit to them. So start with a sort of a long list of learning partners that you identify that can, if you're doing obviously classroom based courses, you're going to want to find a venue reasonably close to your home base. If you're doing it online, that is no longer relevant. But I would suggest doing some research on not just price. Don't look at just price. Look at what you get for the price that you pay. Make contact with the learning provider via the phone. Things to look out for: if you leave a message, if no one's there that's available to sort of take your call, sort of how long does it take for the learning provider to get back to you if you've left a message? How responsive are they? Bearing in mind that at this stage you haven't parted with any money, and the learning provider, to them at the moment, you're a prospect, you're a lead. They're trying to convert you, i.e. to buy a course off them. So they might end up being far less responsive after you've signed up with them than before. These days, with the internet and the way that everything's so democratized, you can easily find out from other learners how the learning partner that you're thinking of going with stacks up. You might hear great things about them. You might hear things about them that start to make you think twice about whether you want to go with them. So all I can suggest here is do your research on which learning provider that you want to go with. Make sure that you're getting value for money. If there are things that I haven't covered in this video, sorry, it was a bit rambling, but if there are questions, comments, things that you want to know, leave a comment in the description and I'll try and get back to you. But if you do decide to go for the NEBOSH General Certificate, as always, I wish you the very best of luck with it. If you're currently job searching for an opening in health and safety, best of luck with that. Positive mental attitude will get you there. And I'll see you in the next video.